right, with that, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom, one of the co-founders and executive chairman of CertifID. We're excited to have the second installment now of the To Catch a Fraudster webinar series. Thousands and thousands attended last year, and we're really looking forward to having this year's programming focused on just the top trends and strategies that we're seeing from a wire fraud perspective, and also cybersecurity, which is why I'll introduce our special guest in just a second. But for those of you that have questions throughout, please put them in the Q&A panel of Zoom. And please remember to provide feedback after. We have a questionnaire, just a quick survey on how we did and how we think about programming as we evolve through the remaining part of the year. So Claudia is driving the slides. Claudia, if you don't mind, next slide. Let's dive right into it. Today's topics, excited. We're going to have some fun today because I'm going to introduce Genady, who's a really good friend of mine now, and one of just an advocate for not only change but security in our industry, a true thought leader. We're going to walk through the evolution of cybercrime in tech, and we're actually going to do some examples. Genady and I are going to have some fun just going back and forth, showing you some platforms that you probably haven't heard about, but maybe don't know a lot about. And then we're going to talk about emerging scams and just how we think about this thing shaping. As we go through this, we want this to be a dialogue, a community of folks that we're getting together on a monthly basis to open up a wider aperture of conversations. And I think Genady will agree, and I will as well. We're kind of building this bridge as we continue to cross it in the way of like the next gen of social engineering in wire fraud. So Claudia, next slide. I want to introduce Genady. So Genady is the CISO at Stewart Title. I met Genady, I got to admit, and Genady, I don't want to embarrass you, but he's kind of an intimidating figure. Like the first time I sat down with him was several years ago. It was at, I don't know if you remember, Genady, we're having coffee, and it was either in Miami, or I don't know where it was, but you know, it was one of those where, you know, he comes across, and he doesn't do this intentionally, but he's a serious guy and he's got a serious job, and you get to know him, and a laughable, incredibly intelligent, but I would say a true thought leader, a gentleman that has been an advocate for the industry from what I've seen now, getting to know him for many, many years. So Genady, welcome. I appreciate our partnership. He and I sit on the InfoSec board of Alta, so I've seen him in action as he's led the change to the best practice standards that were recently updated and rolled out. But also, again, just from a comprehensive view, his lens is about as wide as we've had any guest on this webinar. So, Genady, I know I didn't do you justice. If you want to backfill anything, please do, but welcome.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the introductions. You said more than I would expect.
That's great.
Yeah, and we did meet at one of the Alta's events years ago, and yeah, that was our intro. And yeah. I cherish our relationship and our friendship, so I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it too. I'll never forget it. You were one of the more intimidating people in the industry, but now that I get to know you, it's like anything else. There's a veneer, and then there's assumptions, and then there's the real guy. So it's great. All right, guys, we're going to jump in. So Claudia, next slide. A little bit about Stewart. Founded in late 1800s in Galveston. They have their hands in so many different things, and we've been reading about Stewart and their path towards their mission to be a true value add partner on the underwriting side. So anything, Genady, you want to add on Stewart? Otherwise, we're gonna get right into some of the tech.
Yeah, let's move into the tech. I hope many of your participants know Stewart. Again, I'm here to security partner for you to present on security topics, and let's move forward with it.
All right, got it. All right, so the questions need to go in the Q&A, and this is where we're going to freewheel a little bit, Genady, in the sense of where we find ourselves maybe looking back the last 12 to 18 months relative to like social engineering wire fraud, and then what's keeping you up right now? Like where's the puck moving, and how should we as industry participants, because most of the audience here is either agency management, owner level, closing attorney, we have mortgage bankers, we have other underwriting constituents on, but how do we think about the last 12 months, and how do you think about framing what you're seeing for the next 12 months?
Yeah, so the game is getting harder and harder. We're also playing a whack-a-mole game with the bad guys. You know, technology is not helping. You'll be talking about and doing some demonstrations today about great topic. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is start introducing into our world, which will help. Unfortunately, will help bad guys before it will help us. But reality is the fundamental principles of wire fraud hasn't changed for decades. Now, it's now taken to a different level, but it's always starts with efficient emails. It's always starts with someone's using weak credentials and no MFAs, and the hacker will interject or log in. So here's one fundamental basic that many people do not understand. And I know it's not a technical webinar, so I try to stay out of technical details, but 99% of the email systems are available through the web browser today. So when 30 years ago, this was a client server application, you had a client and you were accessing that something within your infrastructure, within your boundary, your walls. Now everything available over the web. So if you're a user and you using username and a password and no two-factor authentication, and I either bought, stole, or guessed your password, I can log into the system anywhere. And as a matter of fact, there is literally a 1-minute exercise that can tell me based on your domain, on your agency name or your domain name, it will tell me in 1 minute, where are you hosting your email? Is it Yahoo? Is it Microsoft? Is it Google? And I already know where and how to get to it. So the basics haven't changed, and we're still kind of coping with I don't know, laziness, fatigue, ignorance. We've been talking about MFA and some of the strategies for decades. But again, the topic of the conversations today will demonstrate you how the machine learning and artificial intelligence take it to a next level.
Genady, what do you think the role of the title agent is in this battle? I mean, truly.
So title agent the role of title agent, and I've been preaching this for decades, is education. So you need to educate, because remember, you all need to remember, this is life we're living every single day. So we are performing transactions, many of them every single day. We observe and hopefully learn from different attacks. We are trained by our security teams and the partners like Tom through the webinar and other medias. So we're versed with this. Our buyers and sellers, they're doing it every 5 to 10 years. Right. So I think the role of the title agent is to educate the buyer and seller, because in many cases they see them first. And I would go, Tom says I'm a harsh guy, I would go as harsh as saying, well, there is an 80% chance that you will not close on this transaction and your money will go somewhere else. Sometimes we have to be down to the point.
Do you think we're going to stay high level a second, and then we're going to go right into the weeds. We're going to act like we're fraudsters. This is going to be fun, right? Do you think we're beyond the point in our operations where we can ignore technology and security in any way? I mean, it feels like what we're about to show in this AI, that we just put quantum computing in the sense of like that level of capability for social engineering into the hands of anyone, regardless of what their native language is.
Correct. Not only that, but I can also tell you, kind of preempt what you're going to demonstrate and what we're going to talk later, is all of this used to require We'll talk about it throughout the presentations. For example, phishing emails, the basic entry point required the skills before. Somebody would craft this email, somebody will buy the mailing list, somebody will do a mail merge, somebody will use some scripting or some tools to send this. Now, 99% of these commodity tools you can buy for less than $100 on the dark web, and you can just feed the mailing list. We actually saw about a year and a half ago, and I used that in my presentation, we saw the fraud that were, or phishing email, not a phishing email, fraudulent wiring instructions that was done by a commodity toolkit. And the toolkit had 3 different email templates. It had 3 different PDFs with the wiring instructions. And what tool was key, and once you feed the list of the thousands, if not millions of email, what the tool was doing, it was actually randomly selecting a recipient, randomly selecting an email content. And what it was doing, it was actually attaching, it was putting appropriate wiring instructions on top and flatten the PDF. So when the recipient receives it, it's a still PDF but when you unpack this PDF, you can actually see 3 layers, 3 different PDFs within it. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 was ML and artificial intelligence. So it used to require skills on programming this. It used to require high skills to develop this content. And now it just, machine learning and artificial intelligence takes the work out of it. So my favorite saying now is your neighbor's kid can be an ex-hacker now because it's all commodity toolkits.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge that we have. So speaking as an industry participant now, we're navigating so many things. We come off of what I call the COVID bloat in staffing and in process, and a 2-year period that in a lot of ways burned us all out. I mean, it was fine, it was good economically, but the health of the organization and the health of the employees was something on a different yardstick to measure. And now we find ourselves in what I think is probably one of the most concerning real estate recessions, and I'll call it a recession because it absolutely is in our industry, and it's going to be here for a while. I mean, if you heard the reports from Fed chairman yesterday, I mean, yeah, I'm not done yet, and I'm also not looking at lowering rates. Like, get used to this for a minute because we got to get something else on a larger concern under control. And then you strap onto that this idea that, hey, I've got somebody offensively, and globally trying to attack my customer or trying to attack the integrity or my process controls around my escrow account. And I got to admit, some days it's just hard to manage, man. Some days some people ask me, how do you even sleep at night with what you know and what you see and what you're managing? How do you even sleep, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So one of the earlier questions you asked, is it technical or not? And I'll also tell our agents and realtors in webinars that I present, it's very technical now. So if you don't have a technical resource, one of my takeaways usually is if you don't have a technical resource, make sure you have one on retainer, because the last thing you want to do is when you are on the incident, when you are a subject of wire fraud and you need to go investigate the email flow to even figure out where it came and how it came, or something, whether any of your endpoints or your computers were compromised, whether your email system's been compromised, the last thing you want to do during the incident is try to figure out who to call. So it's getting very technical. I
agree with that. And it used to be, if we went back 10 years ago in IT, and maybe it says more like 20 years ago, it was, does everyone's computer turn on? Is it blinking green? And can I print a check and can I print a package, right? I mean, that really was, that was success as it relates to IT. We have since completely outsourced and went to the cloud in all the businesses because that's like the last thing you're even thinking about. I'm not even thinking about uptime. I'm thinking about what was my last pen test? What's my security score on Microsoft, right? Where are the vulnerabilities and how things are set up on-prem and remotely? And I think you're right. For those of you on the call, and this isn't a large agency, small agency thing. This is just simply, if your number's punched, they're going to come. And that's just what we've seen. And you've seen it too, Genady. This isn't, it's almost like completely random. But when they do gain access to that email of the real estate agent or the mortgage lender or the closing agent, whoever it happens to be, they're just coming. And what defenses do you have proactively? And then what defenses do you have reactively that can either prevent or minimize that loss, right? Those are the two bookends. All right, so let's dive into it, guys, and bear with us. I have spent a lot of time together on the topic, but this is going to be kind of like an active skit that we haven't spent time on stage with each other on. But one of the biggest things that is concerning federal law enforcement and international law enforcement now that we're starting to have more access is the evolution of social engineering. So, well, Genady, I 100% agree that tech enablement is starting to hit these crimes, but it's a low tech crime when it presents itself. Why do I say that? You're exactly right, Genady. You don't have to hack into Azure. You don't have to hack into a server environment and get past a firewall of a title company or a bank or a large real estate brokerage. You just need to send an email, get somebody to click on it, and you just phish them. You just got to trick a single person. And from there, the ability to gain and harvest the information to then weaponize for a transfer is fairly easy. So I want to do a little bit of a journey quickly on what it used to look like. What it used to look like was the Nigerian prince email that says, hey, my uncle died and he was wealthy, and Genady, I need to send 30 million to you. And by Monday next week, keep 3 for yourself and, send me the rest. And that was meant to drain, the recipient's account. Now, here we've evolved. So let's go back a couple years, 18, doesn't seem like that far back, but, we're talking, almost 5 years now. And you can see here, this is a payoff. And they come in pretty hot, and we'd all recognize, or at least we should, and I'll call it out in case we don't, please kindly, we've educated on that for the last 4 or 5 years, the word kindly, use the updated payoff letter, I, lowercase I, just fact for closing and disbursement today. Do you know what time the payoff funds will be dispersed? We've seen many that are way worse than this, but this is where we were several years ago. And now I want to jump forward to where we sit early February 2023. And it's this idea of the convergence of different technologies to try to subverge or get around our controls, either technology-wise or process controls, that are going to lead to a diversion of funds. So wire fraud in itself isn't the actual crime, right? The crime is the fact that we're setting these things up under false pretenses. We're impersonating, we're socially engineering people, and they monetize the social engineering through the diversion of funds, through wire fraud, through the harvesting and reselling of information that they find in accounts. Genady, do you agree with that?
I do.
Okay, yeah, so guys, it's a bigger picture for them. I'm in the wire fraud business. No, I'm in the business email compromise business. So I gain access, I spoof people, and the destination sometimes they might not know at the time. But with our recovery services team at Certified, I mean, we're seeing tremendous amount of activity from all industries, not just real estate, but vendor fraud and payroll fraud. I mean, you name it. So what we've moved into is these are the top tech-enabled social engineering tools. Social engineering, guys, it's no more simple than I'm just trying to convince somebody in believing they're talking to a trusted source. They're talking to somebody connected with the transaction that's going to lead to the transfer of funds. So, I don't know, I can run through these. If you want to run through them, then we're going to do a couple examples, but
No, go ahead and run it. And, we can interact during this and I can contribute to some of these topics.
All right, we'll ping pong back and forth. ChatGPT, all the rage now. Google article or a Wall Street Journal article this morning that either yesterday or earlier this week, ChatGPT, which is an artificial intelligence platform to frame communications. The first one that I know of, Genady, maybe you know of a different one, that was simply put into the hands of any user globally. We're going to show it in just a second.
Yeah, so so the back end of this is OpenAI, and it's been around probably for 5 years or so. This is to your point, this is the first publicly available, it's not first iterations, but it's a first publicly available, web-based, accessible, interactive systems that allows a human to interact with essentially system or computer driven by a machine learning.
Yep. Where simply you can type in something and you're going to get a response. And we're going to type in something and you guys are not going to like the responses. I'll give you a trailer on this. Spoof card. We're gonna sample this one. So spoof card, the technology of spoofing a SIM card on a device has been around for quite a while, but it's also evolved. And I'll show you some examples of how that evolution is. In the reason we need to think about what's like version 2.0 of our callback procedure is how I think about it, right? How do we know, and we're really vetting, we're back testing the information that's either coming to us or that we're calling to verify to make sure that there isn't somebody in the middle spoofing. SIM swap is one of the more significant holes that we have in security. And the SS7 network is essentially, think of it as the tower-to-tower network between mobile or cellular devices. And a lot of us are communicating through those on a daily basis. I went online and I saw a toolkit, federal law enforcement put me onto this, that for $200 for the first month you can try it, or for $8,000 you can get an unlimited license, and you can actually intercept the communications and insert yourself directly into a device to either scrape MFA codes or send MFA codes. It's another layer deep from what spoof card is. That's more social engineering based. This is a technical man in the middle that can be done through the tower-to-tower network. Genady, anything you want to add on that one?
Yeah, and there are two separate issues. One is SS7 network was developed probably in the 90s, where nobody actually thought of security. And so the protocol that it communicates to Tom's point, the protocol it communicates to is vulnerable to intercept. And there is a separate issue here, is a SIM swap, which is basically a social engineering. Sometimes it's a force attacks. There you probably have seen the news where somebody will storm into a T-Mobile store and steal a manager's iPad to get out of the store, and within the next 5 minutes to be able to swap the SIM. So they're kind of two different components. I also want to comment on the spoof card. It's been around for a while and it becomes a commodity. But once you see Tom's demonstration, you need to start looking at the angle much, much wider. So it's not just about the spoofing the caller ID anymore. Again, this is an artificial intelligence and text-to-voice translations, but don't think about it in the wire fraud context only. Think about what one can do if one can replicate your voice. It's just not about the closing. It's about, your CEO is calling you with a request. It's your child is calling you and saying, Mom, I'm in an emergency room. So start looking at the wider, look at how technology enabling all kind of attack on us as a human being.
Yeah, in deep fake, the AI voice replication is very similar to that. Recordings like this or anything on YouTube or anything that's in a podcast, there's programs that essentially scrape and analyze those markers, and then they could impersonate by typing a response. There are programs that over a telephone call would replicate Genady's voice, almost pitch perfect. And even the texture and the cadence of the communication and the inflection points. And there was a very famous, it was a $20 or $30 million fraud on an industrial company in Germany, where the CEO was impersonated through an artificial intelligence voice replication they call deepfake, and money went out and it wasn't recovered. The other thing that's trending are this idea of influence bots. And to Genady's point, you had to be a hacker, you had to be a technologist, you had to have some special skill set. And now you can just go into the dark web, you can, go into Telegram, and you can just buy lists. Say, look, I want to run a Kansas City real estate wire fraud, and I need access to, 200 real estate agents' credentials, because I'm going to go out and see if I can grab, on the back end, access to their emails. So that's another one where it's just the amount of information. I forget what the last data breach was, a big one last week or the week before. But when we hear that, oh, Verizon lost 20 million records and T-Mobile, well, that's us, guys. That's our stuff. Like, they don't have Martians as customers. I mean, they're all us at some level. We know this stuff's out there. So let's dive in, and let me queue up a different screen here. God, if you want to backfill any of what we just talked about, otherwise I'm gonna open up Spoof Card a second.
No, I'll let you kind of work it. I don't want to interrupt.
Well, interrupting would suggest I have anything planned, so it would not. I want to be very clear. It's not interrupting. Okay, guys, I want to show you the platform called Spoof Card. So as Genady had mentioned, this is a platform that is openly available. The first time I saw it, I thought there should never be technology that's allowed to be available like this. And essentially what this does is it enables, and you can see the main data, I'm showing you the desktop version, but in live, I do this over my mobile device, is you can essentially put a number in to call, you can display any other number. And then to the user, and again, we're going to show this in a second, it shows up like that person's calling you. And it's the fraudster impersonating that individual. It's a true man-in-the-middle attack on a physical communication. I say physical because, it's upfront. I'm trying to impersonate a call from, an escrow officer to Genady the buyer, but it's not the escrow officer at all. But when he shows up, it looks like it's coming from Sun Title or Acme Title or whatever it is. And you can do it through text messaging. There's also filters, and I'm going to share with you an example of this, of a recording I made to myself this morning, and I'm going to play that in a second. But you can change it from, hey, I want to sound like a woman's voice when I make this call outbound. I can put background noise, and that will bolster, hey, I'm at the airport, or I'm in traffic, or I've got I don't have a good connection because I'm on vacation, but I wanted to, whatever it happens to be, and that will overlay it. You can record the call. You can turn a toggle that says, send this baby straight to email or voicemail. And that's the concerning thing, is that, especially to buyers, or as we administer callbacks in the industry, we don't know these people and they don't know us. And we have to remind ourselves of that. We're essentially complete strangers. We know them on paper. We attach them to a loan, a loan number. We attach them to a property address. We attach them to a relationship that referred us in, but we actually don't know them. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a spoof. It's just this easy. This is not expensive. I'm not on the dark web. You can go to spoofcard.com right now. And I would suggest, if you learned how to do this, then do a lunch and learn series for your real estate agents and your local, MLS associations on this. But Genady, I'm gonna call your desktop phone, and I'm gonna spoof a different number. And I could send this straight to voicemail. I'm not going to. And when I hit place the call, here's what's interesting. I hit place the call, and it's going to send me as the fraudster to a number to call. So I'm going to pick up my iPhone. I'm going to call this 617 number with the 9281. I'm going to stop share right now Genady, and I'm going to let you share.
Hold on. So Claudia or somebody needs to enable, it shows host disabled participants in the share screen. Somebody needs to enable sharing for me.
Perfect.
Sorry for technical difficulties.
No.
So while Tom is enabling in, so let me kind of feel a pause or gap. So the phone spoofing has been existing for at least 3 decades. It was not as sophisticated as it is right now. But if you think about it, law enforcement, police officers, your doctor, so that technology was available 3 decades ago, because when your doctor calls you, they need to be able to spoof their office phone number, not their mobile phone number. And it's actually a commodity now. There are many different services. You can buy this for as little as $20 a month. What makes it takes it to a next level is what Tom shows, where you can insert the backgrounds and emulate the voice, etc. What also you need to understand is when we're manipulating with the numbers, what many of us don't understand is that the white pages are still exist. So it doesn't mean that you don't get that fat book dropped at your porch every year, but electronically everything is mapped. If the number is published or listed, it will be mapped to the name. So all I have to do as a fraudsters, I have to know the range of the telephone number for Bank of America and pick one of that number as originating phone. And the white page is going to do the same. Your phone, office phone or a mobile phone will show up as a Bank of America. You don't have to even recognize the telephone number.
Yep, exactly. We're going to show that. Can you share right now?
Yes. Sorry, it's going to be like double.
Nope. So here I go. There's the number. I'm just going to show this. I'm going to hit call.
Free access code. If you do not have an access code, press star. Invalid entry provided.
Nope.
Please enter your temporary access code. If you do
My dyslexia. There we go.
invalid entry provided. Please enter your temporary access.
Hold on. Calling it again. You'll see this show up right in just a second.
It actually will pop up when the call comes in.
Yes. Doesn't like my access code. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. Generating a new code. You guys got to see this. And what's interesting about this in practice is you're making a callback. Somebody leaves a message and says, hey, call me here. I'm just generating a new code here.
There you go. Okay, so Newberman. So it shows the telephone number that Tom inputted, and it actually matches up the operator, the phone operator, matches it up with the name associated with it. I'm not gonna. Well.
So let me show you another example. Genady, I'll share.
Okay.
I'm just going to play a video. So I went through earlier and I changed the voice. So I called my office line direct dial, and I put in the main dial of the title company. And then I clicked, hey, female voice. Let me play a message that I sent to myself a couple hours ago, as if I was communicating, the fraudster communicating to a buyer. But this is actually me calling my direct dial. Let me play this a minute.
Hey, Tom, this is Beth. I'm actually the manager here at the Grand Rapids office of Sun Title. Understand you have a closing coming up on Friday morning. Terry, who's been working up your file, unfortunately has had a family incident, and I'm going to need to get some wiring instructions to you so we can get funds in advance so we don't have to disrupt or delay your closing. So again, Beth, branch manager here at Grand Rapids office, Sun Title. My direct dial, 616-340-7440. Thanks, Tom. Bye.
So why is that problematic, right? And this is what Genady was talking about. If I can I obviously have a male voice, and I can switch that between either a different voice that I'm trying to mask on the male side or a female voice, and I'm impersonating an escrow officer or the manager of an escrow officer saying to a buyer, which was the example here, hey, something happened. I'm the branch manager. Give me a call back. And then they call that number back. Very personal. It's not the number they have. It's not our general number to the main office there, but it's a number. And then all of a sudden, we're down the rabbit hole of switching out wiring instructions or whatever happens to be. Or they do call back and they use the text message feature to say, I can't answer right now, but what's a good email to send to you? Right? So that they can play it. We've seen it played both ways. And it's an easy way to insert yourself and start to redirect the trust of a callback with that type of technology. So, anything to add there? Otherwise, we're going to go to the holy grail right now, and that's artificial intelligence.
No, and remember, so how many of us remember or recognize the voice number? Ultimately, in Tom's examples, it's someone else, someone not you who you work with before. But as long as it says Carrie and it matches female voice, this is what makes it plausible. And to Tom's earlier point, the inserts and the pauses and everything else, it's just a natural flow how this artificial intelligence generates this voice is just amazing. It's very hard not to believe in it.
Yeah, and the question was that actually you, Tom, speaking into it? It was me, and that's how it was transcribed through the SpoofCard platform. All right, let's go into artificial intelligence. Many of you, maybe you have seen the ChatGPT app. If not, I've got an account. It looks like this. It's very, very simple. There's a little bit of a user guide here on what you can and cannot do. I am going to just I'm going to pose a few questions. Genady, can you see my screen? Okay.
I can. Mm-hmm.
So I just typed in simply, how do home buyers wire money for closing? I'm going to insert that, and then this is a typical flow of GPT. It thinks a second. It's like you're playing war games. I'm going to date myself. It's like the old war games, and I'm waiting for the signal to come back. And guys, this is artificial intelligence. So this is a mechanism that you put anything in, literally anything, and you're going to get a response back. Now, there is some fencing. We've tested things around the margin, but here's a quick run out of 3 sentences that would educate anyone to Genady's earlier point. Hey, they don't have to be experts. This technology is right there for them. Let's dive a step deeper. So send an email to a home buyer requesting them to wire transfer to Title, that's my company name, for their closing funds, and include confirmation when they send the wire.
So while it's generating, let me remind you what Tom says earlier. Remember, we look at the flaws in 2018 example that he shows. We'll look at the flaws at the language, at capitalization, punctuation, styles, etc. Now look at this.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself. Subject line, grammatically on point. There's just not a flaw in this. And even from a structure standpoint, how well it delineates the different topics in the communication.
So let me tell you why this is the next frontier. We'll have to battle this. We'll have to figure out how to battle it. Our email, majority of us have an email security technologies. Even if you're using Google Business Services or Microsoft Business Services, your plan has some basic fundamentals and you can always upgrade it to the highest level. And this technology using the same principles, it's using machine learning and artificial intelligence to find inconsistency and discrepancies in the email. It looks at the language, punctuations, it looks for a subject line. It looks for presence or absence, the greeting. It looks at the signature. It looks at all of these different data points to make a determination whether it's a phishing email or spoofing email or whatever else, any other threat. And by the way, majority of this gets dropped by that security technology. So you probably see less than 20, 10%, 15%, 40%, depends on who your vendor is and how efficient technologies is. This nulls, this invalidates everything. So that means this email is going to make to your mailbox. It's not going to be filtered or blocked by your email security technology because it's flawless. This is what it's our next frontier.
That's a good point. Let me show one more example. So we showed the last example. The first example was, hey, what's this whole thing with, money moving for closing? Next example was, how could we send an email to a buyer requesting incoming funds? This is an email. How could we request a title company to wire funds after closing rather than providing a check? So casual email to a title company. You'll see why I use the word casual in a second. Explaining that a wire transfer would be preferred over a check after a closing is complete. I'm not even saying real estate closing. I mean, look what's not in here, right? I'm just saying draft a casual email explaining that I'd like to have a wire and not a check after closing. And to Genady's point, like our filters, I'll let this run out. You guys can read it. Just aces. I mean, it's just absolutely fantastic from a communication standpoint. But what's not in there, that's why it's concerning to me, is you don't have to have a lot of domain expertise in real estate to understand what simple questions to put in. And by the way, you can put it in any language. Convert an email to English based on this query. I mean, it's almost endless. So this is the next frontier as we think about the accuracy and legitimacy of what they call the attack email. But not only that, but just you can put anything in here. We played around with this thing for hours with federal law enforcement, and anything from cryptocurrency to how to mule money to, hey, make up an excuse that I had a family emergency to request a wire transfer. I mean, send an email that looks like it's coming from the state of Alabama versus the state of Michigan, where it's a whole different dialect. I mean, they have that tooling now. So, got anything else to add on to that? Otherwise, I'm going to move. I want to open up for Q&A, but I want to move to some of the trends that we're seeing, especially like seller not present frauds.
Yeah, so what I want to add is today is this technology, well, not today, on Fridays, this technology had the limitations. So this was, remember, it's backend by OpenAI project. And it was based on the data that was fed into the system in 2021. So it's actually not doing a Google, it's not your Google search, it's not your Bing search, it's access to the stale data as of 2021. And so what changed this week is actually the last 2 days, both Google and Microsoft introduced addition to their search engines that will be incorporating this technology. So think of this technology. So for example, if Tom, think of it from this angle. So if Tom would ask a specific question on a topic that didn't exist in 2021, on a vector or on a type of transactions that didn't exist in 2021, you'll either get incorrect answer or no answer at all potentially. So imagine now you couple this capabilities, this intelligence, with access to infinite resources on the internet that can corroborate the search engine and search results and up to second data from the internet with this massive amount of information. I'm telling you, in the next several months, next several years is going to be very interesting.
Yep. So let's talk about some of the trends that you've seen, Genady, and that we've seen. I guess I'll go first since I'm talking. Mortgage payoffs continue, guys, to be the leading source of outbound disbursement, payment fraud. The timing, the sophistication, the everything that we've seen, it just becomes, it's more crisp. We're also seeing them taking the time to find a money mule that will go in and open an account at the institution where the mortgage servicer or the lender is receiving mortgage payoff payments. So we're seeing more accuracy on the institution actually matching, and then we get down to the account level information. So, and then the other thing we've seen, we did an advisory with federal law enforcement, was the vacant land. I'm calling it seller not present fraud. So you have, it started out where they're focusing in commercially zoned districts, properties that are unimproved without any tenancy attached or owner occupancy, typically without a mortgage. So you have something here in Grand Rapids, you have something in, Charlotte, you have something in Atlanta. They just open up a GIS map and they can see, oh, here's a downtown district. Looks like there's some grass growing here. I wonder who owns that. A few minutes later, they're opening the public record. They would go on typically, and they would hire a real estate brokerage, one that Certified prevented, that was publicized last week. It came in as a valid vetted lead. So this is somebody that the lead generation source vetted this as the seller. Then it went to the real estate brokerage. The real estate brokerage listed it, and then on they went. So we've seen it also with, online brokerage sites that they list it for just a discounted price. They want a quick cash closing, and then they will request a mail away. They'll either impersonate the notary, or for a couple $100, they'll make a fake ID, and then they'll present themselves. Mail away package goes in, wire goes out after dispersing, and then either at the time of recording or much later. And this is the challenge that we have, Genady, is the tail of risk on this fraud is longer than somebody that is showing up only to learn that their money's gone. This one is going to have a significant and longer notice tail to it, but it's them essentially impersonating sellers on property. Genady, what else have you seen? I mean, I know the concerns on the technology that we're going to have to combat, but any other variants that you've seen?
Yeah, so we've seen, so phishing emails, it's, while to Tom's earlier point was the breaches and tons of your data is available on dark web already for sale, they're still going after credentials to your email systems and so we see them spending more time on visual. So there are more diligence put in the right disclaimers, right logos, and make it exactly look alike. And like I said before, it was requiring a deep web development skills. Now it's all commodity skills. We also, so the attackers are utilizing legitimate services, because there are a lot of Microsoft and Google services that tend to be open. They'll use it to create the wiring instructions, or to hide the documents inside of document to obfuscate email security systems and get into your mailbox. So you literally have to pause and slow down and kind of examine and evaluate everything, including punctuation is no longer the case, as Tom demonstrated. So MFA, there are a lot of attacks. We've been preaching multi-factor authentication as a panacea. There are a lot of different attacks now on multi-factor authentication, anything from a proxy. I think lately it's been dominance of MFA, what's known as the MFA bombing. So for example, if you configure MFA to send you an SMS or make the phone call, the attacker will actually try to log into the service, let's say your mail account or whatever else service, and that service will generate the second factor, will either call or send you a text message. And what they're doing it rapidly in such a high velocity that the user finally will say, okay, whatever, I will accept it, or I will accept that call, or I'll send a text SMS. So this is what we see kind of lately on an attacker side.
So guys, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. I've got the panel up or the chat. Genady, what do we do? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, so MFA, this is still the way to go, because I can tell you, if you don't have an MFA, consider, because remember, this is not just an MFA multi-factor authentication to your email account. That's multi-factor authentication to your bank account. I don't need to send you wiring instructions. I can just log into your bank account. If it's not protected by multi-factor authentication, then just siphon all of your money. So we used to tend to, it took a long time for us to adopt the MFA. We're still not there. Our industry is still not there. But when the opportunity presents you to do something security, be conscious to take it to the highest available level. For example, for MFA, the FIDO tokens, the Ubico key, etc., they still haven't been broken. They're very, very secure. If there is an opportunity to use MFA through the application, Google Authenticator or Authy or anything else, always up to for the highest level of the technology that is available to you. Don't settle for just an SMS, because we demonstrated in the last hour that this is vulnerable. For SIM swapping, if you haven't done that yet, all the carriers now have a portability protection. So you need to call your carrier and you need to set up the PIN to be able to port your number. Because remember, I gave you an example about somebody storming into T-Mobile store and stealing manager's iPad and then try to port the numbers, whatever they can do in 5 or 10 minutes until someone in the store disabled that iPad. So if you have a PIN that is protecting your number to be ported, because remember, you can have a legitimate reason. You can be on vacation in Europe and lose your phone, and you'll call your carrier and say, I lost my phone. I just bought the new one. Can you port it to my SIM? And it will be a legitimate reason. So they now interjected the PIN, and you can set up that will require to port your number. I highly recommend to do that. And the fight against the MFA bombing, don't accept, regardless what happening. If you have not requested this MFA, if you have not logged in somewhere, and you would expect this multi-factor authentication, either call you or send you text, never respond to it.
Yeah, a few other things to layer on there. If you're on Microsoft, and many of us are, there's a security score. You can go out and you can run the test and you can get a security score that will give you essentially a state of the union on where you are right now. You take that a step further and you do the light or a full internal, external, what's called penetration test. And that will look at ports, and that will look at vulnerabilities, and look at, updates that haven't been made and patches to different software. A lot of times, almost every breach, you look back at it and you're like, well, why didn't somebody do that, right? It's a lot of it's simple Simon type stuff, and they find those vulnerabilities. And I think one of the biggest thing is this has to become more of a lexicon within the organization, in the industry, that, to your point, it's okay to slow down. We're going to empower our people to slow down. We're going to educate them more on what the risks are. We're going to openly share those. We share them in every single staff meeting that we have, both on the certified side and the Sun side, to say, hey, we're no larger target than anyone else, but here's what we have coming inbound, and it's nonstop. Do you guys recognize this? You proactively fish your employees, but I think the biggest thing is, do they have the ability? Are they empowered to raise their hand, even if it means, you have to make an uncomfortable call to a client saying, I'm not wiring, I'm going to send a check, or you add per diem to that payoff, and it costs you out of your own pocket, a few $100 or $1,000, doesn't matter at that point. But those are some of the concerns. So with the vacant land seller fraud, there's a question I get a lot from real estate. How do we prevent it? I know we can as a title company, but can they? And the answer is absolutely. You need to be educating everyone in our industry needs to go out and educate the real estate agents around almost like an intake of vetting and identity verification. Like, does this even make sense? Right? So how did you find me? What is the transaction about? How long have you owned it? Are they showing you ID? It's just a simple start a FaceTime with them. You know, compare that to social media on what you know of the owner or somebody. They have to be an active participant to prevent these seller not present or vacant land scams. But it's not just that. I mean, I'm in Michigan. We have the snowbird effect, which a lot of the Midwest does. So half the time they're in Florida and half the time they're here. And then half the time they're here, they're half the time are at their house, and then they're at their lake house. So there's a lot of non-owner occupied properties that people have that are subject to risk. But enrolling the agent in that process is huge, because this legally is a hot mess, and it's going to circle back around and attach the risk somehow to the real estate broker or agent for failing to truly verify that the seller was who they say they were. And then we're stung because we dispersed off of fraudulent pretexts, and that's not covered by E&O. Right? So that this is a self-insured risk right now. All right, Genady, thank you. You're a wealth of knowledge, as always, never disappoint. And thanks everyone for tuning in. If you could, make sure you take the survey after, and look forward to the session next month, where we're going to get deeper into some of the insights that we've seen at Certified, the Payoff Protect solution, and just the staggering amount of fraud that is identifying and preventing now on a monthly basis. But Genady, thank you. I know you're a busy guy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, Tom.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Signing off. Take care, guys.
All right.